Hello, Chicago. Welcome back in for another episode of Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Adam Karnick here with you. We have got a lot to break down. The last couple weeks, of course, we have been very heavy on the Bears. That is not going to be the case tonight. We are going to be talking a lot of different things around the city tonight. We are, of course, going to be talking Bears, though, as they have decided to do the Assistant Coach Carousel ride yet again. One of these times they'll decide not to, try to do things the hard way, but I digress. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Plus, Caleb Williams officially announced for the NFL Draft today. And just in time for that, I've got a Justin Fields stat that, while it may not necessarily shock you, it should absolutely get your attention. Elsewhere, oh boy, that was a doozy at United Center on Friday night, wasn't it? The Bulls' inaugural Ring of Honor ceremony. We knew that there was going to be controversy around it, but I don't know that we necessarily expected this to come out of it. We got to talk about that. We got to talk about fandom in Chicago a little bit with that discussion. And then finally, the Cubs did something. They signed players. Hallelujah. We'll talk about all that and more coming right up here on Chi-Town Weekly. And once again, hello and good evening, everyone. I am your host, Adam Karnick. So glad that you are here with us on January 15th, on this cold January 15th. I hope wherever you are warm, you are safe, you are happy with where you are. And if you're a Bills fan coming home from that game, I know you're absolutely not warm, but at least you're happy, I guess. So we've got that going for you at least. If we can't have everything, let's at least have one thing, right? Happy to see everybody in the chat room already hopping in there. Taryn Rodriguez, Wesley Trueblood, and Jen B. Good evening to all of you. Glad that we are here. We have got a ton to go over tonight. We're going to be talking Bears. We're going to be talking Bulls. We're going to be talking Cubs. I've got a tiny little sliver of some Blackhawks good news that came out earlier today. So we got all kinds of good stuff to be getting to in the show tonight. It was Christmas with our family today. So I'm kind of in a warm, fuzzy mood still, even though, it's ridiculously cold outside. So we're gonna have ourselves some fun tonight. We're gonna have ourselves a really good time, and I'm glad that you're here for it. Before we go any further, of course, we do need to bring up, of course, that this show and all of the shows here on IE Sports Radio, of course, are brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This is an all-brisket jerky. It has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein and flavor. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on. All you have to do is visit planetjerky.net to place your order. They offer free shipping on orders of $50 and above, and it does not matter what your palate is, what you prefer. If you prefer more savory as opposed to the heat, smoke and BBQ style is terrific. That's the one that we got a bag of it. My wife tried one bit. I didn't see the bag for the rest of the time, and it was gone 3 days later. They've also got sweet peppered teriyaki. A little bit more heat there, but still very tangy, very flavorful. Or if you like a little bit more heat with it, you can do like what I did. I got the volcanic jalapeno. I actually just got 2 bags of this for Christmas earlier today. Terrific flavor, but a nice kick in there to give you some nice heat to go along with it. Help, especially the winter cold and flu season, help clean out the sinuses. Really good for that. Or if you just like to just pile on the heat, then the Carolina Reaper is the way to go for you. Once again, at planetjerky.net to check out your options. Free shipping on all orders of $50 and above. Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. And IE Sports Radio, we are coming up on our 10th anniversary later this year in just about 5 months from now. For the last 9.5 years, IE Sports Radio has brought you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Be sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to keep up with the latest in sports and with our shows. Also, check out our daily updated website, iesportsradio.com, for sports news, the IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, which just had its most recent class inducted here just a couple of weeks ago. Fans of the Month, pages dedicated to each of our podcasts, our IE Sports Radio community forum, and stop by the shop and check out the merchandise. Thank you for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And you heard how to follow along with the station on the social media platforms there. You can also follow along. This show is available for you on Twitter. You can follow along at IESRC, or if you want to follow along with me personally, I am at Adam_Karnick. And once again, if you are listening live here tonight on Monday night, hop on into the chat room. We've got several people in there already. Taryn, Wes, Jen, everybody's in there. Hop on in. We can interact, have some fun, and enjoy ourselves there. It can kind of become a kind of show inside of a show. Or if you're listening later on in the week on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, whatever the platform is, or if you're just wanting to sit back and just listen, thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. I know you got lots of options in the sports media world. I'm honored and humbled that you choose to make this a place to get your sports feed and buzz. I really appreciate it. All right, let's start off with some Bears talk, shall we? So, of course, we do our show on Monday night, and Tuesday is when the news happens. Luke Getsy, offensive coordinator, fired. Several other members of the offensive staff, including quarterback coach Andrew Janocko, fired. The Bears now are on the look for both an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator, because don't forget that head coach Matt Eberflus basically assumed the defensive coordinator role in October after Alan Williams had to be dismissed, let go, walked away, however you want to think of it. He wasn't there anymore. So the Bears we knew they were going to be looking for a defensive coordinator. They're now also looking for an offensive coordinator as well. We're going to talk about some of the options. We're going to get into some of the options a little bit here, but before we do, I kind of want to talk about the thinking and the decision making first. If you were to ask me, and I think the Bears, unfortunately do this frequently. They look at all these decisions that they have to make wholly independently of each other. If you were to ask me in a vacuum without any context around it, do I want Luke Getsy back as the offensive coordinator in 2024? My answer would be no. I think the Bears can do better. Luke Getsy did not impress as an offensive coordinator, unfortunately. Too many problems especially with play calling. The design of the offense, I didn't necessarily have a problem with that. I understand what they were trying to go for, what they were trying to do, but the play calling especially, and the stubbornness there that you would see, the lack of adjustments he would do incredibly well on script, and then the script would run out, the defense would adjust, and he never had a counter. Far too often he would just keep ramming his metaphysical head against the wall, trying to make something that clearly wasn't working work. So if you were to ask me in a vacuum, do I want Luke Getsy back? No, I'm just fine with them moving on from Luke Getsy. Taryn commenting in the chat room, the Bears need to hire an exterminator and clean house and make sure everything is scrubbed down from top to bottom. I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment, Taryn. And I'm going to get to something you threw out in the chat room last week here in a little bit, with some further context to it. But unfortunately, with these decisions of coordinators and quarterback coaches, you shouldn't necessarily take them in a vacuum. If we zoom out a little bit here, the Bears are still, at least publicly, committed to Justin Fields. They're committed to the point that they're not. They're committed right up until the point where they decide to announce that they're not committed to him. And good evening, Larry B. Hopping into the chat room. Good evening to you, sir. And when you have a situation where your head coach was on the hot seat to the point where they had to publicly announce that they weren't firing him, that tells you, even though they won't admit it, that tells you he was on the hot seat when they felt that they needed to make an announcement proclaiming, hey, we're not going to let this guy go. That lets you know they were thinking about letting him go. So the coach was on a hot seat. The quarterback, they're committed to, but not long-term committed to. And you're a potential offensive coordinator, and you come into that interview room, you know right out of the gate the pressure to perform immediately is going to be extremely high. That you have the 2024 season to install your offense and get it up and running and performing to such an extent that you make the playoffs. Because if that doesn't happen, the head coach is getting fired. The quarterback, if he even is the quarterback, they're going to move on from him, and you're going to get let go. So that's an extremely less than ideal, we'll say, situation to get pulled into and have to make your bones. And so if you're an experienced coordinator who's got multiple options in front of you, I can very much understand why the Bears' position would be less than ideal. While you'd look at that and say, yeah, I hear you, Bears, but I got this option over here that's not quite as intense. I think I'm going to go over here where I know that I'll have a couple years to prove something. Maybe like with the Atlanta Falcons or the Tennessee Titans. Somewhere where that, hey, all right, yes, of course you want to do well that first year, but you might get a year where you're allowed to get your feet underneath you a little bit. So while in a vacuum, yes, I'm okay with them letting go of Luke Getsy. The decision to keep Eberflus but get rid of Getsy first of all, it feels so Bears. We have seen this time and time again. Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune pointed out that over the last 26 seasons, the Bears have had 13 different offensive coordinators. They haven't had an offensive coordinator go longer than 2 seasons in over a decade. The analogy that I came up with this for what the Bears are trying to do, they're once again trying to thread a needle from 50 yards away while blindfolded and facing the wrong direction. Yeah, you can do it, but chances are you're probably going to have to take a chance on somebody who is either on their way out and is just, hey, I got to go 1 more year before I retire, or 2 more years before I retire, and then I can sail off into the sunset and I can be done with this. Or somebody who is way too wet behind the ears that is just desperate to, I got to get out of where I am. Yes, I'll do that job. Yes, yeah. Oh, wonderful. Sure, I'll do it for half the pay of what anybody should be doing this job for. Just give me the title so I can show you that I can do something. And Wes brings up a possible solution here in the chat room. It almost makes sense then to extend Matt Eberflus. That way you can afford you can show to coordinators, both offensive and defensive, that, hey, there is some stability here. This guy's not going anywhere right away. He's going to have 2024 and 2025 available to you to show what you can do. But I'll be honest, though, the thought of extending Eberflus, rewarding a guy that has gone 10-24 the last 2 seasons and started off this most recent season going 0-4 and just looking as though they didn't even belong in the NFL. I can't stomach extending that guy. I almost would have preferred just keeping Getsy, because then you'd know, hey, at least then everybody's on the same page and everybody's on the same clock. If 2024 doesn't work, then you blow everything up and you start over from scratch with a head coach that's brand new, a play caller that's brand new, and then conceivably then a quarterback that's new to the organization, and everybody's on the same page, and you understand that everybody's then on the same timeline, instead of this coach is on this timeline and that coach is on that timeline and this player is on this timeline and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and trying to juggle it all and hope that when you're throwing the puzzle pieces up into the air and hoping that when it lands, it's all put together and not just a jumbled up mess that you then have to organize. That's what you're hoping here with this move. And we've seen the Bears do this time and again. The other thing that I was thinking about when they announced that they were firing Getsy, a theory that a lot of fans have been discussing and some media guys have been talking about too, is that the Bears don't want to be tipping their hand on what they're going to do with that number 1 overall pick. And that gets us into Justin Fields a little bit. And also the fact that Caleb Williams officially declared for the NFL draft earlier today. Today was the deadline for all draft eligible players, that if they were going to be leaving college early, today was the deadline that they had to declare for the draft. And Caleb Williams did indeed declare for the draft. So he will be there at number 1. And the thinking is, hey, the Bears they don't have to tip their hat on who they're leaning towards, Fields or a draft pick, until draft night. They can keep that in their back pocket. Well, now you have to be interviewing offensive coordinator candidates. And if any of them are smart, which they are because they're in the NFL, the first thing you ask when you sit down in that room, do you have any questions for us? What are you going to do at quarterback? Am I saddled with Justin Fields, or are we going to be looking at a draft pick? How do you answer that if you're the Bears? You don't want to tip your hand one way or the other because because they're going to go talk to whomever. And you also don't want to send off the impression that the offensive coordinator isn't going to have some kind of a say in this. But it's a very delicate balancing act that you then have to pull off, where you're letting him know, we value your input on this, but at the same time, we've already made some determinations, but we want you to be part of it without giving away the farm, without giving away what it is that you're going to do. So you're also making it harder on yourself to keep that in your back pocket of how do we move on at the quarterback position. And Taryn bringing up in the chat, yes, I do want to address some of that. And Wes then talking about it too, about Caleb Williams wanting confirmation on what the Bears are going to do. Caleb Williams has been hit by so much just straight up fabrications on social media, whether it was he wants part ownership in whatever team drafts him, to he's going to decide whether or not he goes into the draft until he sees who has the pick, to he wants to know what teams are going to do with him. None of that stuff has actually been confirmed by reporters. It's been social media accounts or Reddit users or trolls, for lack of a better word, that are putting weird information out there about Caleb Williams. To the best that anyone has actually reported, not just put on Twitter, but actually done some digging and reported, Caleb Williams does not have a problem with being drafted by the Bears. Maybe he does, and that's part of the pre-draft process that the Bears will go through in evaluating him, but there's no credible information out there right now in regards to him not wanting to be a Bear. One other thing that might sway the Bears in their decision. All right. I have been a huge Justin Fields guy since they got him. But there's some numbers that we got to talk about here, folks. We knew that Justin was bad in the fourth quarter this past season. But, oh boy. Just how bad? Oh boy. Now I'm going to bring up, we're going to start here with kind of some overall numbers for Fields real quick here. And we're going to get through this, and then we're going to take our first break of the night here. As I get my stuff pulled up here real quickly. So let's start with Justin Fields, his career, some career numbers for him, okay? In his career, he has completed basically 60% of his throws, 60.3%, 6,600 yards, so little over 2,300 yards a season, 40 touchdowns against 30 interceptions, an overall quarterback rating of 82.3. Hello, Mike Pat. Welcome in. I'm just, we're going to go over some Justin Fields numbers real quick here. So I gave you those numbers. I'll give it to him real quick again. Again, for his career, just over 60% completions, basically 2,300 yards, a season, 40 touchdowns against 30 interceptions, quarterback rating of 82.3. This season, in the fourth quarter this season, and we'll do this season's numbers too. Overall, Fields completed 61.5% of his passes, 2,500 yards, 16 touchdowns against 9 picks, a quarterback rating of 86.3. So above average numbers all across the board for him compared to his overall career. But then you get to the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter this season, he completed barely half his throws, 51.1% of his throws, 552 yards, 3 touchdowns against 6 interceptions for a quarterback rating of 53.4. Those are terrifying numbers. Those are abysmal numbers. And that's the money quarter. That's the money time. You know, that's when you need to step up in a big way and go win a game for you. That's when the coaching becomes far less important and the players themselves become so much bigger in those moments at the end of games. And yes, those numbers are down for him overall in the fourth quarter, but it's not like the rest of his numbers in the fourth quarter are great. In his career, in the fourth quarter, he completes just under 56% of his passes, has 10 touchdowns against 16 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 61.3 in the fourth quarter. That's So you can understand partly why Ryan Poles, when he sat down at the end of your press conference, while he said the same thing as last year, that he'll need to be blown away by any of the quarterback prospects, he said it with a lot less conviction and a lot less excitement and enthusiasm this time around, because those are some of the numbers he's looking at with Justin Fields. Taryn wants to be the conductor of the Keep Fields train, and I want to be with you there. He has one season left on his rookie deal. The Bears do have the option. They do have the 5th year option available to them. They have to make a decision by that on that by early May. I believe it's May 2nd is when they have to make that decision on whether or not to extend and pick up the 5th year option. But they do have 1 year of just standard regular control left on him. and as Wes points out, so as much as Luke Getsy was a problem, unfortunately, it couldn't all be laid at his feet. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, every team does some kind of recognition of great alumni, and they're usually excuses to have everybody get the warm fuzzies. Apparently not so if you're the Chicago Bulls. We will talk about that next. You are listening to Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No. Not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on The Defining Moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey yo, what's up? It's your man Bishop, the voice of This Is KC Sports, the show where we go over the Chiefs, the Royals, KC Current, Sporting KC, MU, and oh yeah, if we got time, we'll even throw in some of that KU stuff from our people on the 913 South. Come hang out with us every Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm going to transition off of some Bears talk, and instead I want to talk a little bit about the Chicago Bulls. Now, when a team creates a ring of honor is what the Bulls decided to call it. When a team honors alumni, typically they will it becomes a very easy thing for fans to get behind. Hey, you're discussing legends of the program, whether they're players or coaches or announcers. It's very easy to get the fans pumped up, riled up, and excited about everybody that's coming there, because you're talking about people that were historic for some way or another. And the Bulls' initial Ring of Honor absolutely were people that deserve to be celebrated in the organization. When I first heard that the Bulls were going to be doing this, I thought this was going to be just basically an excuse to celebrate Jordan and that dynasty again. And obviously there's a lot of people on the list, the 13-member list, that were part of that. Phil Jackson, of course, Michael Jordan, Tony Kukoc, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Tex Winter, a lot of names there that were involved, and the entire team that went 72-10. So lots of the dynasty era, but it wasn't just dynasty era guys. You had Johnny Red Kerr, Dick Klein, Jerry Sloan, other members besides just the Jordan era that came up. But still, the whole thing still felt off. And a lot of that was because for a long time, you didn't know whether Michael was going to be there. You didn't know whether Scottie Pippen was going to be there. And in fact, neither one of them showed up. And also Dennis Rodman couldn't make it. Now, Dennis recorded a video and sent it to the Bulls, and he made it very obvious he had every intention of being there, but the winter storms that propped up this weekend, finally we have winter, now that it's the middle of January, we're finally getting winter, that it was the weather specifically kept Rodman from being able to make it. Jordan sent a video as well, though he didn't give any indication as to why he didn't make it, just simply, thanks for including me, guys. Scottie Pippen didn't say anything. So this was already a strange... You're having a ceremony for people, and some of the people that you're honoring didn't bother to show up. And you thought and you hoped, if you were the Bulls, that was going to be the biggest controversy. And you were hoping going in that the fact that Michael and MJ wasn't going to be the talk of the ceremony when all was said and done. Well, how's the old saying go? Be careful what you wish for. Oh boy, the Bulls got that in a big way. The very first name to be announced Friday night was for Bulls former executive Jerry Krause, who passed away almost 7 years ago. He was the GM for the Dynasty era. His widow was out there on the court to receive the honor on his behalf. And as soon as his name was announced, the United Center crowd booed with a fury that I have only ever seen matched by when NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman makes any kind of public appearance. To the point where Teresa Krause, Jerry's widow, was actually brought to tears and was visibly shaking on the court floor. I get it. Jerry was not the most popular guy in town in the late 90s because he set the ultimatum that 97-98 season would be it. That he was he was breaking things up regardless how that season went. That Phil wasn't going to be back. Michael was retiring. Dennis wouldn't be back, that the band was being broken up. And I get it. That made him easy to dislike. I also was reminded of the fact that we just had The Last Dance come out 4 years ago. And we all watched it because it was April of the pandemic and there was literally nothing else to do sports-wise. We all watched it and enjoyed it. But one of the things, as entertaining and as, especially at the time, needed that program was, The Last Dance was not a great documentary because it was so slanted and jaded by Michael's perspective, by Michael's point of view, that at the end of the day, The Last Dance is the story of the Bulls dynasty as told by Michael Jordan. Doesn't mean it's not entertaining. Doesn't mean it doesn't offer terrific behind-the-scenes information and insight and clips and knowledge and fun. But it should not be taken as the gospel truth. Jerry and Michael did not get along, and you saw that in that documentary. But because the documentary's from Michael's point of view and Jerry wasn't around to defend himself anymore, and even if he was, he probably wouldn't have been allowed in the room, you only got Michael's perspective of that relationship, which was acrimonious, and anytime there was a disagreement, Jerry was wrong and Michael was right. And that, I think, stirred up a lot of old wounds and old bad blood with Chicago. There's no excuse to be, and the Bulls didn't handle it the best either. To Wes's point, well, the reason it was allowed to be so slanted, Wes, first of all, watch it. If you have Netflix, I highly recommend watch it. It's so entertaining. It's so good. It really is very good. You just have to understand that this is Michael's story while you're watching it. Part of the reason it's so slanted, Michael owns all the old footage, and Michael retained control over the final product as a condition of getting it made. So again, that's Michael Jordan. You know, Michael Jordan is a control guy. He is a very control guy, and it's in a lot of ways in his life it's worked out great for him. It is just in other avenues it hasn't worked as great for him. But I'd check it out. I would highly recommend it. It's fantastic. It was very good, very entertaining, well done. You need to understand that ultimately it's a 10-hour mouthpiece for Michael Jordan, both directly with his interviews and indirectly with just the way the story is told. But the Bulls could have handled this whole thing better on Friday as well. They didn't announce ahead of time that Teresa, Jerry's widow, was going to be there to accept on his behalf. So a lot of the crowd may not have realized that they were actually booing an actual person out there, that there was an actual person out there that they were now inadvertently booing. But it's still, say what you want about how it ended or that relationship that developed there between those guys. Jerry Krause, the Bulls don't win any championships without Jerry Krause. They don't win a single one. Not in 91, 92, 93. The 72 and 10 year doesn't happen. The repeat against the Jazz, none of that happens if Jerry Krause isn't there. He brought in Scottie Pitt. Before Krause, the Bulls were Michael Jordan and his renegade band of misfits, or as Michael referred to them in the documentary, it was Michael Jordan and the Cocaine Circus. It was Jerry Krause that brought in Scottie Pippen. It was Jerry Krause that traded for Dennis Rodman. It was Jerry Krause that drafted Tony Kukoc, who is so instrumental to the second three-peat. Jerry Krause hired Phil Jackson. And Phil Jackson, by far, got the biggest ovation from the crowd. Yes, Krause was the guy that ended it all, made the ultimatum that this is it. This is an old, aging roster that has far more years behind it than ahead of it. And I am making the call that we need to move on, because that's what they pay me to do, to make the tough calls. But without Jerry Krause, you don't have any of that. You instead have what you had in the 80s and what you had in the 2000s before Derrick Rose came along. So, and to Taryn, they weren't booing his wife necessarily. They were booing Jerry. I'm going to be willing to give a lot of those guys the benefit of the doubt that they didn't realize that his wife was there, that they saw Jerry's name pop up on the screen. It also didn't help that his was the first name that popped up. What the Bulls should have done is done a couple of names, then done Jerry, so that the crowd was kind of warmed up a little bit. Instead, they had Jerry out there first. They didn't tell people that his wife was going to be down there to receive the honor on his behalf. So they start off with Jerry, the crowd boos, and then sees that she's down there. But it was very tasteless. It was very inappropriate. It was not a good look, Chicago. We need to be better. We also need to take one more quick break. And then on the flip side, the Cubs actually did something. They were the only team in Major League Baseball that hadn't signed anybody. That finally ended last week. Who's coming to the Cubs, and does it matter? We will discuss that next here on Chi-Town Weekly, part of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Well, what is up, Carolina Nation? This is John Felipe of the Carolina Cast, of course, the podcast of, by, and for the Carolinas, right here on IE Sports, your direct feed for all that is sports. And I'm reminding you to tune in Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern for the latest in Carolina sports, whether it's the Panthers that keep on pounding, the fly natures of the Hornets, the storming Hurricanes, the battle of the Blues with Duke and UNC, the fight of the Clemson Tigers, or the amazing atmosphere of any Carolina college. I'm talking App State, I'm talking ECU. I've got you covered. Once again, tune in for the Carolina Cast with me, John Felipe, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
What's going on, football fans? This is me, your boy Larry B, inviting you to join myself, Colin Reynolds, Mike Pat, and John Felipe for one of the most electrifying football shows you have ever heard. 3 and Out, right here at IE Sports Radio. Recap of the week before, a preview of what's to come, and of course, 3 hardcore head-to-head prime-time face-offs each week. You don't want to miss it.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Adam, as we are presented, as always, by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Just a couple more minutes here on this Monday night before we cut things loose. We talk some Bears, we talk some Bulls, now let's talk some Cubs. Cubs made a move. They were the last team in Major League Baseball to make a signing. They had their fan convention over the weekend, and they had some things to talk about besides just making Craig Counsell the new manager. They brought over a 30-year-old pitcher from Japan, Shota Imanaga. Comes over. He was one of their stars from the World Baseball Classic a couple of years ago. He had most recently pitched for the Yokohama Dene Bay Stars. He spent 8 seasons with them, and he's got some good numbers. Overall, not the most impressive of people to look at, 5'10", mixes in a fastball that is in the low to mid 90s, some sliders, some curveballs. His other pitch that's probably his best pitch is a splitter. Not a huge surprise there, coming over from Japan. That is an extremely popular pitch in the Japanese leagues over there. It is very common for pitchers coming over from Japan to not only throw a splitter, but throw it very well. Imanaga, he's very good at making guys strike out, even though he doesn't have an overpowering, by today's MLB standards, fastball. He's good at making guys miss. He had 174 strikeouts over just 148 innings last season. His ERA a year ago was 2.8. For context, the Japanese league is roughly equivalent to like AAA here in the U.S., but those are numbers that'll get you noticed and numbers that'll get you brought up. He also only issued 24 walks a season ago. That averaged out to 1.5 walks per 9 innings pitched. There were only 3 pitchers in Major League Baseball, first of all, that qualified, but only 3 Major League pitchers that had a better walk rate than Imanaga did a year ago. He does struggle with giving up some home runs. He gave up 17 home runs a season ago. And the Japanese league isn't known for giving up a lot of home runs. So, and with him, going to be pitching in Wrigley Field, we all know how Wrigley is in the summertime. That ball can fly. It's going to be imperative that Imanaga miss bats and not give up home runs there. He does have some lift on his fastball. He is able to elevate in the zone and get guys out with that fastball up, though. So that is something that can help. He's also a lefty. The Cubs could, you can never have too much left-handed pitching out there. So an excellent signing. We will see how he lines up specifically with the Cubs, but expectation is this should be probably near the top of the rotation. Probably won't be your ace, probably won't be your day one starter. That's probably going to be Justin Steele. So he, depending on how Craig Counsell wants to line it up, then he might be your number 3 starter, so you don't have 2 lefties back to back of each other. But certainly this is somebody that can be top end of the rotation talent. The Cubs also made a trade with the Dodgers last week. And on the surface, it just looked like they were going after prospects. It did not look like the trade only involved guys that were in the minors at the time. But the cream of the trade coming from the Dodgers organization to the Cubs organization is infielder Michael Busch. Michael Busch is a corner infielder. He was the 6th ranked prospect in the Dodgers system. He's already spent some time in the majors. He played 27 games a year ago for the Dodgers. Primarily, he's been blocked by other veterans in Los Angeles from making it, which is why he was in AAA and only came up to the majors to help cover for injuries. Michael Busch is somebody who should be able to slot in, if not at third base, then at first base, depending on what else the Cubs do. Bush is also a lefty. He hit 27 home runs for Oklahoma City last year. That's the AAA affiliate for the Dodgers. And it just cost the Cubs a couple of teenagers who are going to be a few years out before they're going to be in the pros. They also received in the deal reliever Yency Almonte, so some bullpen help there. But Michael Bush is definitely the cream of that trade for the Cubs. I would not be surprised at all to see Bush starting opening day at third base for the Cubs. It would not surprise me at all to see him up there with the Cubs. And if he can do there at the AAA level up in Wrigley, where you know that ball loves to fly, it's a wonderful place to hit. It's good for lefties and for righties. Then some good days might be ahead for the Cubs. They still have some other work to do. Getting Cody Bellinger back, which is sounding like that should happen. There's some other moves that they still need to make. Another solid first baseman would be a big help. That way Bush can concentrate on third. They can figure out what they're doing for Christopher Morel. But finally, the Cubs made some moves. That is going to do it for our show here tonight. Once again, a big thank you to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. Go check them out at planetjerky.net. They are offering free shipping on all orders of $50 or above. I have 2 bags of volcanic jalapeno to get into. I am looking forward to that. Whatever you pick, you will not be disappointed. Thank you to Larry B. and all the hard work you do, sir, behind the scenes here at the station, keeping the shows running, moving, keeping us all organized and on track and on task. Thank you to everybody that hung out in the chat room with us tonight. Taryn Rodriguez, Mike Pett, Wesley Truebra, Jen B., and, of course, the one and only Larry B. And finally, thank you for coming here. Once again, whether you were listening live tonight on Monday night or whether you were listening later on in the week as a podcast on any one of our platforms, whether this was your first show, your second show, your 165th show, thank you for being here and showing your support. I all know that life can be crazy. We're all going through different things, whether it's weird things happening at home, things happening with our jobs, things happening in the real world. I am so glad and humbled that you choose to come here every week to, maybe you're blowing off some steam, maybe you're wanting to get caught up on the sports, or maybe you're just wanting an hour to get away from reality for a little bit. Thank you for coming here. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. We will be right back here next week. Same time, same station, breaking down whatever might be going on in Chicago, whether it's the Bulls, the Wildcats, Illinois. We will be talking it all. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you next time.